but I basically leaned over the table, and you can imagine as executive or command staff, I'm like, we're going to fix this. And they all just kind of looked at me with big eyes and got a little scared and said, okay.
Hello, and welcome to Shop Talk, where we talk about what's going on in law enforcement and around the Scottsdale Police Department. Now here are your hosts, Chief Jeff Walther and Commander Chris Coffey.
Hey everyone, welcome to the 13th episode, Chris. 13th episode of Shop Talk. I'm Chief Jeff Walther with my trusty sidekick, Commander Chris Coffey.
Thank you.
But yeah, 13th episode already. We're excited to be back with you this month, and amazing guest we have, and Angela Harell, who will be speaking with us momentarily. It's going to be a great discussion about her, about the 100 Club, about the amazing things that she and her staff and her organization do on behalf of public safety. But let's talk a little bit about what we have going on right now, Chris.
We have a lot of stuff happening, Chief. This is a busy time for us. We're getting ready for Super Bowl. We're getting ready for Waste WM, Phoenix Open, Barrett-Jackson. Great things. So we're just we're making sure the community is ready and prepared, and safety is paramount.
Yeah, notice that you do the same thing that I do. You want to say waste. You can't call it Waste Management Phoenix Open anymore. You got to call it the WM Phoenix Open. So, yeah, a lot of preparations related to that and what's going on here in the PD, around the Valley. A lot of things going on with that, especially with Scottsdale PD. Again, we have the Open, we have Super Bowl activities, we have sanctioned and unsanctioned events going on in the city, and so definitely a great time to prepare. But we will be really connecting with all of our Valley partners, law enforcement, and we're going to be a net importer of police resources in the Valley. And so everybody's been great offering up some help, because you just don't have enough to do it all. One thing that I'll talk about real briefly before we bring Angela on and start talking with her is something that I don't think is getting enough attention in the media and a spotlight right now. Is, we talk about a lot of different things in our country going on, a lot of polarization, a lot of division, a lot of politics, a lot of nonsense going on that really I think has our eye off the ball, so to speak. There's a major news story that I just don't think is getting enough attention, and it connects with so many big news stories, and that is this significant reduction in those people who are interested in becoming police officers in the country, in the state, in every police department that I know of in Arizona, and all of them around the country. We spend a lot of time in the media and social media talking about the rise in violent crime and things that have gone on in just about every city, including our own. And the media tends not to connect that rise in violent crime with the significant staffing reductions we're seeing in law enforcement in Arizona and around the country. And so I'm going to connect those dots for you in just a brief discussion about that. And we see what's going on is we have reaped what we've sown in this country by the media portraying law enforcement in such a negative light over the last 2+ years. And I always, when I have this conversation, I say, is some of that narrative, negative narrative, is some of that warranted in places around the country? It is, but it's certainly not warranted in every police department and every police officer who's put on a badge and a gun and said, I want to protect and serve those people who are either unwilling or unable to protect themselves. And so what you've seen is a very strong news cycle over the last 2+ years that have really painted all of law enforcement in a very negative light. And I use an analogy. I compare that to teachers. When you see a teacher who commits, and there was an article I read not too long ago about a teacher who, in a high school, a female teacher who had sexual relationships with 9 different students in the high school. And wow, you look at that and people watch that and see it on the news, and they call that for what it is, and you say, well, that's a predator. But by and large, we don't apply that thought process to all teachers. We don't say all teachers are bad. We don't say all teachers are predators. Of course not. That would be ridiculous and shameful. We look at that and we say, Well, that's wrong, and that's one teacher. We don't apply that same broad brush to teachers in the way we do law enforcement. And so when you have a Derek Chauvin who kills George Floyd, or you have others that commit acts of violence, then what happens is the media portrays that, and many activist groups portray all of law enforcement as bad. And what that has done for us over the last 2+ years is that we have seen people leave the profession, people retire, people just get out completely and say, I don't want to do this anymore. We have fewer and fewer and fewer applicants who are interested in a life of service in a law enforcement organization. And what you're seeing is massive, massive shortages. I'll give you just some in the Valley. At Phoenix, at 525 sworn vacancies. That's madness. That's 3,125 sworn allocated positions, and they have 525 vacancies. Chief Ken Koss from Mesa and I are good friends, and their recent numbers, they just came below 70. They're at 63 sworn vacancies. Here in Scottsdale, we're at 34 sworn vacancies. Tempe is a similar or higher number. Chandler, the last I saw, was 29 sworn vacancies. This is not sustainable, folks. We need your help. We need to help get the word out to those young people and not so young people who have an interest in serving others and really standing up for this country and this profession. If you have those people who are looking for something to do, they're getting out of the military, they're in college or getting out of college, and they're yearning for something to do that is service oriented, that is essential to the forward progress of this country, this city, our state, then please, gently urge them to think about law enforcement. It's an amazing, amazing career. There is nothing like it. I talk about the nobility of service regularly. There is just nothing like this profession where you can stand in the service of other people. You can protect and serve those people, again, who I said who are unable or unwilling to protect themselves. And so we are not going to turn this corner on crime until we get the right numbers of law enforcement officers in the right positions, in the right police departments. So just my side note, I'll get off my soapbox, but just give that some consideration. All of these things are connected, Chris, and that's my PSA for today.
One thing, Chief, that you talked about that if I can give my 2 cents is it is one of the most noble professions out there. But the fantastic thing about our profession is there's so many different jobs within law enforcement. So there is, patrol, which is phenomenal, but then there's specialty units, there's detectives, there's the lab, dispatch, detention. So anybody out there can find their passion. So that's the most, amazing thing about this profession. So,
Are you looking to make a change in your community? Are you ready to be the change? Are you looking for us because we're looking for you? Join the SPD and apply today at ScottsdalePD.com. Our special guest this month has a story that will amaze you, bring you to tears, and joy all at the same time. She has a history of being an accomplished former special agent of the Diplomatic Security Service, contract special investigator for the U.S. Department of State, former secretary and fire chief over the General Motors Proving Ground. She's a real estate broker and partner in local businesses. She's a trusted resource for Arizona's public safety members and is the CEO and president of the 100 Club of Arizona. Please welcome Angela Harrell to Chief Talk.
I am super happy to have Angela Harrell here. She's been an amazing partner to us, to the law enforcement community in Arizona. And there are times, I tell you, during very, very difficult times when law enforcement officers or first responders are killed or seriously injured in the line of duty, that Angela is, she and her staff are those angels who come forward and really do some amazing, amazing things and continue to do amazing things. And Angela has a story herself and how she got connected with the 100 Club. But so welcome, and if you would kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be in the position you're in today. But you have such an interesting background that I didn't even know about, and so can you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. That could be a really long story. I'm not that old, but it's still kind of a long story. But I'm sitting here kind of just like, there's so many things I want to even talk about just based on your little intro, talking about, recruitment and retention and retirement and all of those pieces that are such important factors and all of the things that are happening around the country. But then Commander Coffee here had mentioned also just the different facets of law enforcement and how you can serve your communities and such. And I come from a farm in rural Minnesota, and it's a hog farm. Super sexy, right? I mean, people are like,
It is.
yeah,
People
5,000
need bacon.
pigs. Yes. Bacon is a fruit, I heard. Did you know that?
It's a fruit?
Yeah, it comes from the swine vine. Horrible. I know, that's gross. Anyway, just for the vegetarians out there. But nonetheless, I come from a farm in a very rural community, 2,000 people. My high school had like 400 people in it, and our town has half the number of people in it as my kids' high school, which is kind of crazy to think. But started there, ended up though at ASU. Like most Midwesterners said, that's enough of this shoveling and these frigid temperatures. But I came to ASU and was fortunate enough to apply to a position with the U.S. Department of State Bureau of Diplomatic Security Service, of where I served as a special agent for nearly a decade. It was a great opportunity, another different facet of law enforcement that a lot of people don't think of. I never imagined I'd want to be the kick in the doors SWAT kind of person, but yet diplomacy is right up my alley. I can sit here and talk to you folks or talk to anybody else at the same time, and usually can maneuver through it with a little bit of class. And but during that time, I ended up we had a couple different roles. So we did protection. So I did protection for Secretary Albright, Secretary Colin Powell, and Condoleezza Rice, but also some other pretty incredible folks like Nelson Mandela and also the Dalai Lama. So really ran the gamut.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So protection was a big piece that took me, along with some other service obligations there, again, that multifaceted approach, to ultimately 45 countries throughout the world. And there's no greater country than the country we live in. That is what I
Totally agree.
learned.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wish more people felt that way or recognized that.
Yeah, well, and that's the beauty. And hopefully we can get back to talking a little bit about what has happened in the last 2.5 years. And, my perspective is different because I have had the opportunity to travel. And with that defunding police movement and all the negative rhetoric, and I could go on for at least an hour about that. But I say quite often, if these folks who really truly believe in defunding police and defunding our first responders as a whole, if they had the opportunity to go spend some time, maybe a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 months in a country where 911's not an option, they might change their perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, so often we take things for granted in this country, and that's one of those things. The freedom is amazing. The freedom of speech you're talking about, all of it is amazing. It's just that I think we've gotten so comfortable. Mm-hmm. We've gotten a little lazy, and
Yes.
and now we just take that for granted.
Well, and it's now empowerment from your basement. Everyone has a voice.
Totally.
And from the keyboard warriors, they call them. But yes. So, my time overseas definitely gave me good perspective. And not only were they short-lived travels, but we also did embassy security and facility protection, working very closely with the Marine Security Guard detachments, obviously in the Foreign Service realm, with different components from, let's say, the working with the FBI legats overseas, the CIA, and some other pretty incredible folks. So that was another piece of what we did.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, that's only like 2 parts of what we do. And then the final piece was ultimately just visa passport fraud, some domestic investigations, also international investigations that support things or support initiatives against child trafficking and all sorts of different approaches.
So is that when you went over to the State Department, or how did that?
So the State Department, Bureau of Diplomatic Security, all 3 of those things are encompassed under that one umbrella.
Okay.
And it's a foreign service opportunity for law enforcement, if you can imagine. So those are the three major responsibilities under that special agent role. And it was, I call it poor man's jet set, because thank you, government, for flying me to all of these wonderful places that most people would never want to go to. However, I was able to experience them, and now I can go as a tourist to places like, let's say, Italy, or someplace just very first world.
That's pretty amazing. So then you make a transition. You come here, and I looked, because I didn't know this either, former security and fire chief over the General Motors Proving Ground. So it's, at some point you transition out of that diplomatic security spot, and you come here, which is a little different than the Midwest, considerably hotter.
Yes, it's okay.
Far more miserable.
I know, but fast cars, why not?
So how did that happen?
How did that happen?
Diplomatic security, jet setting to the automotive industry.
Yeah. Well, and in full disclosure, technically I was security and fire, so the law enforcement and fire chief. Sorry, Chief Walter, but
that's okay.
Actually both roles there.
I did that for a little while too in my very short retirement. I too was excited to be a hose dragger and hang out at the fire station.
Okay,
it's a great
candidly,
job.
I mean, we've talked about this, but I am holding my Scottsdale Fire coffee mug this morning, which is the coolest one I've ever seen.
I have one. I have to full disclosure. I have one on my desk as well, and they're pretty amazing. So they did a great job in having those made.
They sure did. So how did I end up back at GM? Well, I would say, in my tenure with the State Department as a special agent, obviously I started single and young, and you can do lots of things when you're young and single. I had no pets. I had no children. I had a plant to worry about. And when you travel 77% of the time, even the plant is hard to sustain at some point. But fortunately, you have a small community that can help each other out.
Should have been a cactus.
Right. I would have had better luck, but no, I chose this sprawling green plant. Anyway, nonetheless, but I actually, like I said, traveling a lot. Well, then I got married. Whoa, that slows you down, because then you're like, okay, whose career is going to lead? And he was an officer and a firefighter and a paramedic, not three guys, just one guy. And nonetheless, we were like, okay, whose career is going to lead? How are we going to do that? So it became this tag team. Like, I'm going to ask for a leave of absence here, and then I'll come with you overseas to Chile, because I happened to be there for almost 2 years. And that was wonderful. So he got his master's, and we came back, and I got pregnant. Well, that'll really slow you down. So if getting married doesn't slow you down, having a child will slow you down.
Yeah, definitely. Kids are wonderful, but they'll definitely slow you down.
All of a sudden they become the true priority, right? And then I had a second child. I know, like grinding halt is basically what happened at that point, because you're like, all right, hang on. I can't be traveling with the secretary, and you cannot be jumping out of helicopters. Somebody has to be the constant with these children. So yeah.
Somebody has to raise these things we made.
Yes. Yeah. We both can't be gone 24 hours a day. So nonetheless, anyway, stayed here in Arizona. And unfortunately, during that time, while I was on a leave of absence and he was out here, we had a terrible situation that happened within our family. Bruce had gone to work on a beautiful October day, and during his time at work on the helicopter, the rescue helicopter with the Department of Public Safety, Arizona DPS, he was doing a rescue in Sedona, and during that rescue, he was struck and killed by the helicopter rotor blade. So at that point, you just got to think about what's important. Is it the travel? Is it the jet setting? The poor man's jet setting, I should say. Is it what is it? And I leaned into my kids and I said, you know what? A sense of community. That's what's important.
Right.
The community did bear hug us, and I'm so forever grateful for that. Both sides, fire and PD, because of his affiliation.
Right, he was both.
Yes,
yeah.
I know, the hose dragger, and so that doesn't. I could go on all day about that, but it was, and actually he worked for Scottsdale Fire actually for a couple of years prior to going back over to DPS when the accident happened. So they're also near and dear to my heart.
You know, I can't imagine that trauma in your life, and it's interesting. And there's a connection that I have. My son-in-law is a flight paramedic with an air ambulance company that flies in and out of Glacier National Park, Kalispell, and the Whitefish area.
Oh my goodness!
And so I remember when your husband Bruce. I remember when that took place, and it just. when my daughter married my son-in-law and a former Army Ranger, who this was his goal, I thought, it can be so dangerous.
Sure.
It's just an unimaginable. But you have taken what has got to be one of life's hardest hands that was dealt to you, and you just seem to have so much poise and class and connection. You really turned that into service. I talked about service at the beginning of the show, and you are the poster child of somebody who is in service to a community that can often be in pain. And so, can you talk about that a little bit? How you made that transition from just the unimaginable tragedy into where you are today?
I think that a lot of people in their struggles in life, whether it's about with cancer or whether it's a tragedy similar to mine, people want to channel their energy into giving back. And often people will start a nonprofit or they'll get involved in a nonprofit. It's like whomever helped them, they want to make sure that they can also give back or pay it forward. And that's absolutely how I ended up where I am. When I was given that notice of that, it was a terrible day, obviously. The next morning after, the 100 Club showed up at my house, and I had no idea who they were, which is hard to believe, with all of that public safety service to our community already, and then to not know who the 100 Club of Arizona was just so shocking to me. And it was a tough time. The economy, it was a recession. It was just, we were extended. We were a young family. We've got 2 little kids. They're only 2 and 4, and just, I don't know. It was just so much going on. The 100 Club came in and they handed me a check for $15,000. And I'll tell you, it allowed me to just take a breath. I didn't have to worry about paying the mortgage that month. And we were stretched, we made poor choices.
Right, like any young family,
Yeah.
especially any young law enforcement
Yes.
family, that's just,
Right.
that's what we do. That's life sometimes.
Absolutely. And now, as like I said, he's fire and he's PD. So of course, he's like, oh, we have to have a boat. Okay. And we've got to have the, I could make
Oh my
all
God,
sorts
that
of
is
jokes.
so the firefighter in him. We got to have a boat. We must have ATVs.
Yeah, we got to have the big truck.
I was going to say the big truck.
Yes. Yeah. It was not red, but the big truck. So you had to have all those things, and you realized in an instant that you don't need any of those things. So when they did come in and supply us with that additional fund or funds, it was very supportive and wonderful. But more importantly, I sat across from the individual at the table who had gone through a similar journey as mine. She had lost her husband, happened to also be DPS, was a motor officer, and he was killed in the line of duty many years prior. But again, it has to do with hope. It has to do with service. It has to do with the ability to pay it back. So right away, I was working with the team from DPS primarily that first week. We had meetings every single morning. I had no idea how to plan a funeral. My kids are running around the house, and there are a lot of strangers, but yet we call them family. We also have friends in the house. We also have true biological family in the home. And in that instant, for whatever reason, people become laser focused on certain things within their own loss. So maybe it might be, what is the weather that day? Mine happened to be insurance, which is kind of like a crazy thing, but I had a insane gravity defying 2-year-old who might as well have had a frequent flyer card to Phoenix Children's Hospital, who was amazing. And I was like, what about our insurance? And they were like, oh, it'll be fine. Don't worry. Your family will always be taken care of. We're here to support you. That's day 1. Day 2, Angela, why are you asking about the insurance? We told you everything's going to be fine. Day 3, same thing. I remind you, he was killed on a Monday afternoon. The meetings basically started Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, Friday morning. Every day I asked the same question. And on Friday morning, they brought somebody new to the room. We all know what that means. It means that they're going to give me information that maybe somebody else who already had an established, relationship didn't want to give. So I said, okay, you're sure we're good with the insurance? And they said, oh yeah, sorry, it's the end of the pay period.
That it ends the end of the pay period.
Yeah. So we haven't had the services, nothing. We haven't buried him. Nothing. And yet they've turned off all of our benefits. Like, all I'm asking is to make sure my kids are covered at least for another week or so, because he was the primary, provider of the insurance benefits, just how we chose them. that was tough. And so, how did it lead me to where I am is kind of where I'm going with this. But I basically leaned over the table, and you can imagine as executive or command staff, I'm like, we're going to fix this. And they all just kind of looked at me with big eyes and got a little scared and said, okay, not knowing what they were getting into. But yeah, we should probably fix that. So that started my initiative to try to give back and affect change in different ways. And one of which was to become an ambassador for the 100 Club and to help other families that were ultimately going to come after me, of which they did. And one way was to work with the legislature here in Arizona to institute a law that it was a challenge, and it took almost 2 years, but it is now known as Harrell's Law, and it allows for continuing access to insurance through the department, but at our own cost, for basically forever, which is a beautiful, beautiful gift.
Wow, that is amazing, and thank you for doing that. And it's sad that it had to take 2 years to get that done.
It's, what's so surprising is people are like, what do you mean? Like, that doesn't exist already? And why doesn't that exist? And why aren't we taking care of our families? And I really believe that it's not about that somebody didn't do it. It's that they didn't have the knowledge of it and the effect that that would have, for example, on a young family. So for us, it was $1,900 a month for Cobra until we could figure out a plan. And we paid that $1,900 a month reluctantly. But like I said, for 2 years, there's no retroactive piece, and we are paying our own premiums and such, but at least we have access to this larger plan that we started with. And, it's important for young families like that to have that sense of security when they feel like all sense of security has been removed from them. So that was kind of the initial steps. Like, I want to do this. I want to affect change. And okay, we did that. And they said, Ange, are you happy that we got this done for the police officers here in Arizona? And I go, well, actually, no. And they said, what? And I said, here's the issue. What about fire? So we went back to it, and we got fire included as well, which was very good. And that ultimately led me to helping out with programs at the 100 Club and being more involved, doing some program development ultimately. Fast forward a few years, the board called and asked me if I would be their CEO, and I took it. It's been an honor of my life to serve in that role.
I got to tell you that, I started with the PD 28 years ago last month, and you just floored me with that whole explanation of, that's the one person comes into the room that wasn't there prior, and it's, your medical benefits end at the end of the pay period. I mean, who didn't think about that before you? I mean, there were many that came before you, and sadly there'll be many after. Who didn't think of that? Who just assumed that a loved one killed in the line of duty, and now all of a sudden, the pay period's over, so that person is no longer quote unquote employed. Therefore, especially when they gave their life in the service of that particular department, that's crazy.
Well, and you as the chief, a couple different things I would say. It's something that a department never wants to be good at. You don't want to have the frequency of loss within your department to have to be good at that part.
Yeah, definitely.
And I give DPS kudos because, again, they didn't have a loss prior to mine. It had been almost 10 years since that previous loss. And so the manual, if there was a manual, is outdated. Okay, it doesn't apply anymore. But I'll never forget, and why do I do these things? I don't know. People are like, Angela, they get a little scared when I come around. But when the director at the time gave me that terrible news that evening, of course, he was flanked by his command staff and everybody was remarkable. But when he told me that Bruce had lost his life that day, I looked at him and I said, who was the last deputy or trooper? They've changed the name. So it used to be officer. Now it's trooper. Right. I said, who was the last trooper killed in the line of duty? And he took a breath. And this is prior to him being in that role. And he goes, Buckmister, Aaron Buckmister. And I said, okay, I just wanted to know if people do really remember. And talk about putting the poor guy on the spot.
Wow. Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, that's
right.
You're right. You asked tough questions because I think you were going to ask some tough questions of us here too today. But
yeah. I'd love to. Yeah, so it's been quite the journey, but truly the honor of my life to have ended up there. And I've been at the 100 Club now for over 7 years. I never imagined I'd get. I'm going with lucky 7 instead of unlucky 7, unlucky 13 for today. But anyway.
So if you could just kind of go into a little bit more about the 100 Club and some events they do, and how do they raise money and for our listeners.
So what's kind of fascinating is the 100 Club is a nonprofit organization that supports all public safety, police, corrections, and fire throughout the entire state, all 4 corners. And we do that without any question. There's no qualification except for that you are currently actively serving our community anywhere in Arizona. So we do that in a lot of different ways. I talked a little bit now already about our line of duty death, and that's what we're most known for. But it actually is one of the smaller parts of what we do. What we do most is to support those that have been injured in the line of duty, and we do that at a pretty high level. We support them every single month they're out of work until they are able to fully recover or, unfortunately, medically retire if necessary. So we can do that with a monthly stipend all the way up to $18,000, which is pretty special because those are the folks that need that extra support, that extra encouragement, the eyes on to make sure that they're not forgotten about because they may have a longer recovery. Again, going back to you're always part of the department. Well, until you're not. And until there's some disconnection, and it's how do you keep that engagement? And we feel like we're an essential part of that engagement alongside the departments that continue to support them through the process.
I think you make such a great point because, even officers and firefighters think, okay, 100 Club's there. They're going to be there if I lose my life in the line of duty. But I think that the point you talk about right now is that it's just so much more than that, and that's not even the biggest component. Mm-hmm. And so that's terrific. Can you kind of speak to other programs that you have? And Chris alluded to, there are fundraisers that you do. And so can you kind of speak to that a little bit as well?
Absolutely. So one of the other impactful programs we have is what we call our Heroes program. And that Heroes program is to support in the event of any kind of life-altering situation with a public safety family. So let's say they have a child or a spouse that has been diagnosed with a critical illness, God forbid, a terminal illness, or they lose their child or spouse. Well, we're able to provide some financial assistance for that as well. It is a one-time assistance, unfortunately, but that often will help with medical needs or, unfortunately, funeral arrangements. So it's a big part of what we do as well, because those are the things that directly affect our officers and firefighters every day. The health and well-being of your family. And that is what is all-consuming. And that also leads me into our mental health and wellness initiatives, which are everything right now. Obviously, we've all learned a lot in the pandemic, whether you're a community member or whether you're currently serving with public safety. Mental health is everything. And these initiatives that we have, Bulletproof and respectively Fireproof, they offer immediate resources in the palm of their hands to make sure that they can truly get what they need. It's all de-identified, completely anonymous, and they can raise their hand and say, you know what, I'm just not good today. And I'm not really good after that call or those calls, God forbid, there's several. So we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to share their stories, get therapy, do some of those self-assessments, whatever it might be, not only for them, but their family members also have access to that. So we are doing that and coupling that with training and coaching and other opportunities for them to get the help that they need. Why? Because when a community member calls 911, they absolutely expect you to show up with your A game. You don't get to show up with your B game, your C game, or be like, my back hurts, I got hurt sleeping, I don't want to get out of the truck or the car, whatever it is. You don't get to do that. And I think the community takes that for granted that they're going to get A game all the time. So we want to make sure that we're supporting them with those mental health and wellness initiatives on the backside so that they can be their best every day.
Yeah, wow. It's, these are things that I would tell you that even all law enforcement officers or firefighters, that, like I said, they have an idea of what the 100 Club is, but I don't think that anybody really appreciates the depth and all of the extra that you've brought, that your organization is currently doing for just pretty much every facet of health and well-being for officers and firefighters. Kind of I think about nationally. So I know we're well taken care of here in Arizona. Can you speak to that on a national level?
Well, we're spoiled here in Arizona. I say this quite often because there is not a service organization that is similar to ours that functions on a national level. They do specific things. They might help, work with mortgage payments. They might help work with, loss, exclusively line of duty loss, but they don't do all of the things like I mentioned. They also don't do scholarships for the kids like we do here in Arizona. They also don't buy equipment like we do here in Arizona, trying to fill those holes, fill those gaps where they exist. There's a lot of other 100 clubs, but they're very small and they function at many different levels, and none of us are connected, which is kind of a crazy thing. But, the 100 Club of Chicago is currently rebranding to be the 100 Club of Illinois, and to cover more than just Cook and Lake County. 100 Club of Houston is also very successful for their respective area. And recently I've been working with the 100 Club of Minnesota to breathe some life back into their organization as a result of, all of the negative rhetoric. I say all the time, I'm from Minnesota. I can't believe what happened there. And everyone I know from there said, that was a one-off. That is not who we are here. This is not our culture. This is not what happens here. So they're trying to push back a little bit and say, hey, you know what? We're a united front. We're here to support those officers that are out there doing the good, and we need to support them because otherwise, there's these terrible things like FIDO that exist, right? And I will cautiously share what that means, but it's happening a lot in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. But within the culture, so they call FIDO, F it and move on, F it, drive on, because it's just not worth sacrificing their family, their life, their career for some of these really, everyday misdemeanor type situations. Sad.
There's so much to unpack there because you're right. There is, I think we talked about it after Ferguson. And we talked about the Ferguson effect.
Absolutely.
Right? When you're in the profession and you have a family, young family or otherwise, you have a pension on the line, you're committed to public safety, and you look back and say, I don't know if I'm going to get involved in that because that could put me, on the front page of the newspaper. Newspaper, but on the front page of, a social media post. Right. I could be on a YouTube video. There's so much there that it's so hard.
And it's that sense of community, right? It's like, where do you identify? Who do you identify with? And, being, like I said, from Minnesota, that's where I was born and raised.
Right. And that narrative and that thought process is only progressing. I mean, it's progressing on so many different fronts, and it kind of takes us almost full circle back to where we started in a narrative that you talk about in the defund the police movement, or the feeling that many officers have around the country that I can barely even do my job without fear of retaliation, without fear of being assaulted, without fear of being shot at. And that's what we're dealing with in the country right now. And I worry that we're on the brink, and we're not going to be able to come back from the brink. That's my biggest worry.
I agree too. And in a world where everything is on film, everyone has a cell phone camera, and guess what? You guys wear body cameras too. So those are a beautiful thing for so many reasons because it increases accountability. But no wonder we have an issue with recruitment. It's so hard to say, I want to live my entire life on camera. But guess what? There are people out there that are doing that, and they are amazing, and they're always doing the right thing. It is being supported by the community, by the officers, by those involved. But it's a tough place.
It is. And I think it's actually a perfect storm. Because when you bring all of this narrative together and you oftentimes indoctrinate kids via social media, young people via social media, to say that the police are bad, and then now we're reaping what we've sown, and that like I said, the fewer and fewer applications. Kind of changing gears, going back to the 100 Club, because something that you talked about. It's fascinating to me is that we're spoiled here in Arizona, and that there are kind of fledgling efforts or some efforts around the country. Any chance that there's there's a potential for you to be like the national 100 club. You're the person to bring all of them together in all 50 states. What a great opportunity.
That's exactly what I was thinking about too. I think you are that person that could do that.
I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you. And I've worked on sleeping less so that we can get those kind of things done.
So when did the 100 Club in Arizona start?
1968.
And then why do you think that we are so successful in Arizona for that?
So I believe the beauty that we have here is we're progressive. You know, we're one big small town, but we really all kind of unite together to work on bigger initiatives. And like many of the other 100 clubs, we started with supporting line of duty death, and many of them still only support line of duty death. But thankfully, that is the minority of, for example, what we do here in Arizona. So they might not need to respond near as often as we do. So we actually lost. So in 2020, we were all suffering from the pandemic and COVID, and no one knew what to do and how to do it. And we were so concerned about our public safety. We were out there trying to get PPE or personal protective equipment when it wasn't always available, to make sure that all of our officers and firefighters had what they needed. So 2020, we're doing all these things. We're so scared we're going to lose. And then all of a sudden we're like, there's this window that opened. You're like, oh, 21. Okay, here we are. It's going to be better. Last year in Arizona, we lost 69 public safety members. We lost more individuals last year than we've ever lost historically, even outside of 2013 when we had the Granite Mountain hotshot tragedy here in Arizona. 69 public safety members, 7 suicides, about 45 COVID-related deaths that were, unfortunately, the COVID was incurred in line of duty. And then obviously we had some other unfortunate tragedies due to felonious action, et cetera. So it was the hardest year we've ever had, especially as an organization, coupled by the fact that, you know, you apologized to the newspaper a little bit ago, but coupled by the fact that normally there's this response where there may be a telethon or a radioathon or something along that line where people come out and they're like, you know what, this is horrible. We want to help this family. We want to put funds back into our survivors fund so we can continue to pay it forward. But that all went away. It all went away when the number of deaths that we had increased tenfold. And it's never really gotten back there. So we need more support now, more now than ever. And there's a lot of different ways that people can get involved, whether it's to put our license plate on your car. Besides the fact that it's the coolest looking license plate out there.
It is. I have it on my car.
It's good job. I checked actually in the parking lot before I came in. No, it's the distressed black and white flag with the thin red line and the thin blue line through the middle. Yes, I understand the red is a little more prominent, but that's your eyes. That's how that works, but they really are the same. So that license plate initiative has been our saving grace. I don't know if people know, but in Arizona, if you put a vanity plate on your vehicle, it's going to cost you $25. But $17 of that $25 goes back to supporting respective programs within the nonprofit, and ours goes back to help support all those things like buying equipment that make you safer, mental health and wellness, you know, scholarships, more so mental health and wellness, and our line of duty injury program, et cetera. So there's a lot of ways that people can get involved, and that is such an easy one every day.
Mine's 50.
Yours, because you personalized it.
Yeah, it's personalized.
And just so you know, that part goes to the state. And more than 75% of all vanity plates are personalized. So no wonder we have so many vanity plates in Arizona, right?
So coming up in September, what other events can people join and contribute?
Sure. The soonest event we have is something that people can't personally, and I hope you never have to participate in, but that is our Survivors Retreat, where we take all of our widows and we host them for some self-care and mentorship, and we're going to take them here. Actually, we're going to be up in North Scottsdale, thanks to some incredible community supporters. We're going to work on that. Obviously, that's not something for the community. They can always support that. However, we don't ever want you to have to be part of a group up like that. Subsequent to that, we also have our 9/11 Tower Challenge, which is happening in a nice, cool indoor arena where it's going to be about 36 degrees. Now it's over on the west side at Gila River in the Gila River Arena, but the 9/11 Tower Challenge is actually happening on the 10th rather than the 11th because it's a Saturday morning. And that's a great opportunity for people to come out and honor the number of steps and those lives lost during the fateful day on 9/11/01 in the World Trade Center. So 2071 steps. Now, yes, it sounds like a lot of steps. However, you can virtually participate, which also means sleep in for the cure. You can also just walk the concourse or just come out to participate in that facet. And then right after that, we have Founders Day with the West Valley Mavericks. So here in Scottsdale, we have the Thunderbirds, which everyone knows of because of the WM, right, supported golf tournament. However, on the west side, they have West Valley Mavericks. And what they are doing is they are doing Founders Day, which is a big food truck festival, and no cost to get in. However, you can purchase tickets to be part of our VIP tent experience. So again, supporting public safety.
Amazing. Great stuff. I think we're going to go into the speed round, but I just keep getting focused on that national effort. Angela, come on. You were the 2021. You were in the 2021 Phoenix Business Journal's most admired leaders, right? So
what an honor,
right? And so to me, that has National 100 Club CEO, director written all over it.
I would
think,
love.
I agree. Most definitely.
Well, I would love that opportunity because I think that our nation needs it. It's beautiful that it gives such support right here in Scottsdale and throughout Arizona. But think of what we could do. Think of what we could do for so many. Tell me about your most memorable call that you've gone on.
Mine is actually, it's so horrific that I will give only a few details here. But I was a lieutenant, and I have a lot of fortunately, I think any police officer in a career has some mind-blowing wonderful calls and mind-blowing horrific calls. And I always go with the thing that pops in mind because I had some wonderful calls and some just terrible calls. But this one, as soon as you ask the question, it pops in. Memorable because it was straight out of a horror movie. And it was a domestic issue that turned into multiple homicides and ultimately ended with a shootout between dad and an adult son in the kitchen after dad had killed mom, killed the sister, and then adult son engaged in a gunfire, close quarters gun battle in the kitchen with dad. And ultimately, son was wounded, survived. Dad did not survive after both guns went empty, and they attacked each other with fists and knives.
Goodness.
And it was a kind of a macabre horror show when you went inside that residence. Memorable because it was just off the charts
well, these
evil.
are things people shouldn't ever see. And
agreed, yeah.
And so maybe you can come on my podcast called The Call, which is Stories from Behind the Badge, and we'll learn a little bit more about that. However, but this is a great testament to the mental health capacity and what's important, not only on the community side, the fact that even happened and making sure they have resources, but then coupled with, your role starting as an officer and or sergeant, lieutenant, commander, chief, you name it, it still sticks with you to this day for a variety of reasons, I'm sure. So hopefully we can unpack that a little bit later.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I often will tell people that if you look at any firefighter, any police officer, if they've done the job for a short period of time, there is not a police officer or firefighter out there that does not have some level of post-traumatic stress.
Without a doubt.
And I think we tend to, on the law enforcement side, especially those who have been in the profession a long time, We grew up in a different era of policing. You talk about wellness, which is amazing, and we push a lot of wellness initiatives here at the PD.
Yes, you do.
But that was not the norm 28 years ago when I started. It was
not incredible.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
For sure.
And we've gotten progressively better over the years. But yeah, there is. I think all of us walk around, especially those who've been in the profession a long time, walk around at a state. There's a state there, an equilibrium of some level of trauma or stress that maybe we've dealt with, maybe we haven't. So
Absolutely.
pretty interesting.
It's almost like that trauma bond, and that's why cops usually hang out with cops and firefighters hang out with firefighters. Good, bad, and different. It just is what it is. And even though we talk about maybe it could happen, it actually does happen. And it's happening in our own communities. But we're so fortunate that our officers that are out there every day are truly insulating the rest of us from these horrific things that are happening. But that's why we're here with the 100 Club, because we always say we're your backup. Because guess what? Even you guys need backup.
So true. Yeah.
Okay, those are my hard questions.
We don't want to admit it sometimes either.
Most of the time, you don't want to admit it. But
a good thing about the younger officers and firefighters is that they're much better at admitting when they need help, as opposed to dinosaurs like Chris and I.
Well, you have to shift a culture. And because they've started early, because now in the academy, you're actually having these conversations that weren't even part of even my academy, right? Or either of yours. It's just more commonplace to have those discussions. And that's a good thing, because it will ultimately help that shift.
That's a wrap for this month's episode with Angela Harrell. To learn more about the 100 Club, you can visit their website at 100club.org. That's 100club.org.
Hey everybody, it's Tony with the Canine Unit. We have the Desert Dog Canine Trials and Public Safety Expo. We're going to be at Westworld again, October 22nd and 23rd. Every canine unit in the Valley will be participating, so there's plenty of opportunity to cheer on their favorite city.
We also wanted to give you a friendly reminder that if you ever are in an emergency situation and cannot call 911, text to 911 is an option everywhere in Maricopa County. Now let's finish up the show with some final thoughts.
All right, Chris, you're going to do the speed round for Angela and I.
Okay.
Speed round. Very exciting. I love these questions.
Agreed. All right, Chris.
All right, something more lighthearted.
Throw yours out there.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So in Arizona, we are famous for our sunrises and sunsets.
Uh-huh.
So which do you prefer?
Oh, I also think we're famous for the 5 C's. Oh, I love a mountain, being up on the side of a mountain, looking at a sunset, I think. Yes. But the beauty of a sunrise is the day is so fresh and it has not been jaded in any way. Possibilities. Hope. Like I said earlier.
Right. Love it.
But we got awfully soft in this episode here real quick.
Sorry. I'm just here to show the other side.
What's that?
She didn't pick.
She did. She said
I think I said
sunset.
both.
Yeah, she did say sunset.
It's my diplomatic nature.
Chief, what about you in Alpine?
Definitely sunset in Alpine, from my property in Alpine. The with the mountains in the background, the pink hues, the cloud. I mean, it's just sunset.
The sky does amazing things here in Arizona. That's why they call it the painted desert.
You've traveled 45 countries, been all over the place, but most amazing place in Arizona that you visited?
I know where I want to go and I have not been yet.
Which is?
They only allow roughly 25 people per day. You have to register well in advance. No. What's it called? It's like the
natural
wave.
Bridge?
No,
Oh.
it's like the wave that goes through the. I'm gonna have to look it up and cheat on my phone. Can we
Is
come
it
back?
Antelope Canyon?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what it is. Thank you, Antelope. I was gonna say Amangari, but I can't afford that. But that sounds amazing too. But I think that's over the border in Utah.
You know what mine is. Mine's Alpine, Arizona. It's I think the prettiest place in all of Arizona.
I've never been.
Never heard of it.
Antelope Canyon?
Yeah, never.
Oh my goodness.
Seen pictures of it.
Oh, you've seen photos. There's
I
no
gotta
question.
All right, what about favorite place in Scottsdale?
Oof. Favorite place in Scottsdale. I have so many favorite places. Are we talking like establishments to visit or like what are we talking
Speed round, your choice.
about? Oh, I do love the living room up at DC Ranch.
Nice.
one of my favorites. I also just love driving up in that North Scottsdale part. Again, that little bit of elevation, being able to see the city, and the fact that it feels almost a little more rural, even though you're right here in the middle of Scottsdale. So I would say in that area, can't go wrong with any of the resorts. They're all amazing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. This is so hard, you guys.
It's a good question.
I didn't get any of these in advance, just for the record.
Wow. Started as a cop here 28 years ago. This is going to sound so strange, but my favorite place is more a collection of places. It's Old Town.
Yes.
I like Old Town because of the food, the entertainment. My wife and I are a bit of foodies, so we love trying different restaurants. And there's so many little hideaway spots in Old Town. It's just absolutely amazing. So there's just so many great places in Old Town. That's my favorite.
Excellent. Yeah, I love Scottsdale, and my friends that live in other areas, Gilbert, Chandler, they always ask me to come visit them, and I'm like, why would I leave Scottsdale? We have everything here.
That's true.
All right, what's next?
That's it.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask some hard ones, like what's Angela's favorite movie, of all time, something like
Top Gun all day long. And not just because it was re-released.
Well, I was going to ask favorite comedy movie.
Oh, comedy. See, I'm so bad at this game, you guys.
Super Troopers.
No.
Fletch.
No. Oh, that's good, you guys. Okay, you can enlighten me in this arena.
All right, those are our last questions. Angela, I can't thank you enough for spending time with us today. We know how busy you are, and especially as you get ready for your run for National 100 Club president. But the work you do on behalf of all of us and the families, of which you're will always be part of our family. You're one of us. What's great is I know that I'm always going to see you. Either at the summit up in Flagstaff, or hopefully you're going to go to Laughlin for the Chiefs conference.
Of
It
course.
is. It's a great place. You are one of us, and the work that you and your staff does is just absolutely amazing, and we just can't thank you enough.
Well, we are absolutely honored, and thank you all for your service to the community.
Thank you.
You bet. All our listeners, thanks again for listening to us. Hopefully we're bringing you some, like today, we're bringing you some just great stories, great insight on those things that impact the law enforcement community here in Scottsdale and in the state of Arizona. Crazy times. I finish every show with that thought process. A lot of craziness, a lot of division, a lot of angst and anger going on in our country right now. Some of that is being fomented on purpose. Just please be critical thinkers. Pay attention to that. Take care of one another. We are all each other has. And so remember that every day offers each of us the opportunity to be more in the service of others. And that's my challenge for you. It's for myself, for my organization, is to be more in the service of others. Take care of each other, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you for listening to Shop Talk, episode 13. If there's something you wanted to know, please visit our social media pages at ScottsdalePD on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or TikTok. We love getting to know you, the ones who are listening to the show. We look forward to next month, where we have Dr. Solom, emergency room physician and Scottsdale Fire Department's medical director, and we're looking forward to see you at the canine trials. Till then, be more.